Most of us are familiar with this block here. This is a log cabin block, but have you ever made one disappear? I love disappearing blocks. Let me show you how to make a disappearing log cabin block, starting right now. So for my log cabin, I picked out a good mix of lights and darks. I've got 8 darks and 8 lights for my log cabin. And then for the center square, since log cabins are traditionally made with red squares in the center, I got this super bright red batik. So I'm going to start with 2.5-inch squares in the middle, and then for the rest of these, I'm going to cut these up into 2-inch strips that will go around my log cabin. So I've got my little sewing set up here. I've got all of my light strips up top here and my darker strips in another row down here at the bottom. And this is just how I make log cabins. Some people like to pre-cut their strips, but since all of mine are going to be a little different, the different light strips will be in different places and different dark strips, etc. I'm just going to tilt you over this way just a little. And then I've got my 2.5-inch red squares right here, and I'm just going to go down the line and grab them. I'm not sure if it matters or not, but I am going to start all of my log cabins with a light strip. So I'm just going to go down the line and start with a different strip with each log cabin. So first I'll start with this light strip, and I'm just going to sew this along one side, and I'm just going to build this as I go. So I'm going to put my first strip alongside my 2.5-inch strip. This is just easier for me so I don't have to measure my strips beforehand. I just like to go as I go. And now I'm going to press this back. I've got my iron on the other side of my sewing machine, so I can just turn my body like that, and there I've got my first little thing. Now my second white strip will just go down the line, and let's see, I'll grab this strip and I'll just sew it right down the side, because I sewed this one on, and now I'm going to turn it 90 degrees. Most of you already know how to make a log cabin, but for those that don't, I'm just going to do this quick tutorial. I'm sewing this one down. And cutting it off at the bottom. It's easy to see where to cut it off because my fabric is see-through. I'll put this strip back in its place, and then I'm going to cut off the side here, and now I can iron that. So now I've got 2 sides, and I'm going to give it another quarter turn, and now I'm going to put 2 dark strips, one along this side and one along this side. I'll start with this one and just go right down this side. I like to trim things as I go. Just makes it easier. I don't have to get up. And for my log cabins, I like to go, for this one, I'm going 2 rounds, and that will be plenty big for this log cabin. And I'm going to cut off this excess right here, right along the seam, and give it a press. And now I've just got one more dark strip to go on this side. We'll go to the next one here. Let's see. And just put this right sides down along this last side here. And I'm matching it up with the red square. These are going to stick out here and here, but I can trim those off as I go. This is what works best for me. And trim. Throw that back on the pile. and then I'll trim these excesses off just to be even with the seam allowance, and give that a press. Just like that. So now the next one will be a white strip down this side, and I'll just go in order, and I'll fast forward from here on out because I think you might get the gist of it. So there is my log cabin block. I've got all of my white strips on two sides and my dark strips are on two sides with my red square in the middle. Now I don't know if it makes a difference, but just in case it does, I decided to start all of my log cabins with a light strip. So let's go to the next step and make this log cabin disappear. Okay, so now that I've got my beautiful log cabin block, you notice I haven't trimmed anything. I'm not going to need to. You'll also notice that I have got two layers around. So starting from the center square, I've got two layers going either direction. So I went 2 times around. Now this block will work for any number of log cabin sizes. So I tried it with 3 rounds of larger strips. I tried it with 3 rounds of smaller strips. So I'll show you those in a minute. But our next step is to turn this diagonally. And what we're going to do now is I happen to have this awesome 3" by 18" ruler, and I'm going to cut 1.5 inches away from the center on both sides. So I'm just going to take my 1.5 inch line, which is actually the center line of this ruler, and I'm just going to line it up, line that line up with the points on my centers. So I've got just going down diagonally down the center of that. But the important thing is you have to remember to, when you're doing this, all of your lights on one side, all of your darks on the other side. If you do it like this, where your lights are up top and your darks are on the bottom, it won't work. So you got to turn it so that lights are on one side, darks are on the other. Then you can take your center line just like this and line it up diagonally on that center square. And then I'm just going to slice off these corners. There's a light corner, and then I'm going to turn it around like this. I'm going to do the exact same thing. This nice 3" ruler, now I can just line up the 3" line with the side here, and then my center line is going right through that center square diagonally, and I can just cut off the dark side. So now I've got 2 triangles and a strip here. Now I'm just going to take these and switch them around. So my light now goes to the dark, and my dark now goes to the light. And I'm just going to sew those on just like that. I can match up these points and they will line up. Now it doesn't have to be perfect because we're going to trim this block down. So let's sew this one on this way. Let's sew this one on this way, and we'll see what that block looks like. Now that I have sewn them on the opposite sides, that looks pretty cool, but let's square this up. So I'm going to turn it back to the side, and I'm just going to square it up. Now, originally I had them squared up to 7.5 inches because that's what worked, but there was one that I accidentally squared up to 7 inches, so then I ended up squaring all of them to 7 inches. And what I did is I just put a little dot in the middle of my ruler that measured 3.5 inches both ways. So I can put that dot right in the center of that square, and I can use the lines on my ruler to kind of guide me to where that center is. And then I'm just going to trim it up to 7 inches. But like I said, with yours, you can probably trim that up to 7.5 inches. I just made a mistake and accidentally trimmed one to 7. So that meant that they all get trimmed to 7 instead of wasting one block. So let me get that trimmed up, and then that will be ready for our design wall. All right, I think that looks pretty cool, but let's get it up on the wall and see what they all look like. Before we look at the design wall, I want to show you the sample blocks I made. So I just used random scraps in light and dark. So this block here measures about 6.5 inches. I started with a small square in the middle that measured 2 inches. So I started with a 2-inch square, and then I used 2-inch strips all around. So that made a smaller block. And then I tried it with a big square. So I started with a 2-inch, I believe, let me see. I think I started, no, it's a 2.5-inch square in the middle. And then I went 1, 2, 3 rounds around using 2.5-inch strips. So this block measures, let's see, 10, 11, 12, 13.5 inches. So this is a big old block. So you can use this with the same technique with any log cabin. You just have to decide how big your strip in the middle is going to be, and that is just a personal preference, but it's constructed the exact same way, and so you can totally tailor this to how big you want your block to be, how much you love making log cabins, and how many times around you want to go. Now, I also wanted to let you know that if you do choose a bigger block, your inside cut is going to be bigger. So what I do is just figure out where your center square is and then measure at least a 1/4 inch bigger than that when you make your cut. And so I just round up to the nearest one. So for this one, for example, it's about 3.5 inches wide, this center strip. So you'll need to adjust it depending on how many times you go around and how wide your strips are. So go at least a 1/4 inch, and then you can round up from there if you want to. So that's how you adjust it for a different size block. Just a little extra tidbit of information there. So this is the layout that I'm gonna go with. I really like this layout a lot, but I tried other ones, and you can actually use any layout that you would normally use with a log cabin. You can use it with these, and it looks just as good. To me, this looks like there's some lace around these squares, and that's the only way I can describe it. I really, really like it. And I think what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put a couple borders around here. I'm gonna do a dark border, and then maybe a thin red border, and then another dark border. So I love this design. I haven't sewn any of the blocks together yet, so that's my next step. I'm gonna sew them together, and I'll show you the finished product right here. But I really wanna thank my members, because they are the ones that allow me to provide prizes for our monthly creativity challenges in our Facebook group, the Revelation Quilts Guild. If you're on Facebook and wanna join that guild, the link is in the description, and it would be so fun to have you in the guild. Right now we're doing the challenge where we're showing off the best of our 2024 quilts. So if you want to get inspired, that's the place to be. All right, so with my borders, this is the final quilt. I love that little extra pop of color in the border to kind of give your eyes a place to settle with that red in there. I love this one, and I guarantee that when your friends see this, or when anyone sees this, they are gonna rack their brain trying to figure out how you made it. Because when you look close, it blows your mind. It's impossible to see how this was made. I am in love with this quilt. I'm super excited about it. and I hope that you make it too. This is the disappearing log cabin quilt, and it is going to be a showstopper. Now, the way I did mine here with the 3 borders, I've got a 3-inch border, a 2-inch border, and then another 3-inch border. The final quilt ends up 52 wide by 66 inches long. So it is a throw size quilt. It's perfect. I really wanted to make it bigger, but I'm going out of town this weekend. I was pressed for time and I wanted to get this tutorial out to you. So here it is. I can't wait to see what color you make yours in. Thanks again for watching. Have a great day and enjoy sewing away.